YouTube's live. Oh, actually, is that live? Hopefully. Well, it's saying it's live. Anyway, hopefully this is live. Kia ora, g'day everybody. Welcome. It is Friday the 13th, and it is, let's get this mouse in the right place, 2:32. I had to change the timing just because, hang on, while I do some stuff here, because I've got a fair bit of work on. So anyway, those that might usually come and check out the live on Fridays at 7 o'clock in the evening, apologies for springing this surprise on you now. I'm not expecting anybody to be on this live, which is fine. If you get a chance and if you want to have a look at the live later, you should see it on the channel. So anyway, where are we? Let's just get that there, and hopefully that's going to show up. So anyway, in this live, what have I got? Doing this because yeah, got a fair bit of work on, got some more stuff that I need to do tonight, and it's going to run past the 7 p.m. time. So thought I'd use this time to answer some of the questions. I've already done some other videos in that as well, uploaded those already, and I think there's another one that will go up over the weekend or so. These questions anyway have come through. There's a few. This first chunk of questions is in regards to the pre-selection training camp. So there's been a few of those queries that have come through from a whole bunch of different people, which is cool. That there's a number of people interested. And so far at this stage, there are 3 people signed up to the April pre-selection training camp here in Wellington. So that's the update on that. A few people have asked how many are there so far. There's 15 places available. 3 have signed up. There were 5 EOIs. A couple of those are tentative because they've got potentially some other things that may be coming up, including potentially starting their basic training for the military in Australia. So it's that. Pre-selection training camp. Have you got it? Oh, yes. So this was one of the fellas. Have you got an age limit? I'm now 63 years old and wouldn't mind giving this a crack. Former military person as well. I don't think he'll mind me mentioning his name here, but his name or his handle is Hukurangi Rangihuna, I think was the surname. But Hukurangi anyway is what he referred to himself as. It's after, must be Ngāti Parau lad, like me, maybe. Or maybe his parents just like the name Hukurangi after the mountain. So he's 63. He served in the military a few years ago, was based over in Singapore for a while in that as well, from what I recall from his message. And he's interested in giving the camp a go. He did speak about maybe he's just more interested in some of the navigation stuff and maybe some of the other bits and pieces that'll be a part of it. But I got back to him. So thank you for the query. I hadn't thought about an age limit until you put that question in. Obviously 18 years minimum and then up. And if you're in your 60s or older, and I have to admit you are the only one that's inquired about that as far as I know, that is that age, or is that of that vintage or wisdom, let's say, that experience. There, as long as you're in good shape, you're confident in your health and well-being, you're happy to read and sign and complete the waiver and assumption of risk and the medical declaration, and all of that checks out. If you're happy to do that, then you can come along and participate. As I've mentioned with the camp, I think in one of the videos, it is a what's the name? It's a much nicer version of a selection, let's say that, with the elements added of stress, uncertainty, critique, and criticism for those moments in regards to how the 36 to 48 hours flows, because we still want to give those candidates that are participating in the camp, who are preparing to go on to a selection at some stage, whether that's here in New Zealand or Australia, we still want to give them exposure to that so that they can get a bit more of a, what's the word, physiological response, emotional response, a bit better mental picture of what to expect. And if you've gone through, I suppose, like with anything, if you've gone through and experienced to a degree what some of those things are like, not just for selection, but anything in general. Stress and pressure with regards to individual sports or team sports or academic studies and all that sort of stuff, and maybe not quite getting the result that you were after, and then having to go away, learn, adjust, and fix up the things where you went wrong, and then come back and do it again. If you've had exposure to those things, it can typically set you up better to be able to deal with not only those types of things that may come up very similar to what you've just been through in a training camp, as an example, or it could also better equip you and enable you to be able to deal with other things that maybe none of what was covered in the pre-selection training camp. There might be something that's thrown up and during your selection course which just wasn't covered, or you didn't expect or didn't anticipate, or it wasn't discussed during the pre-selection training camp. So hopefully that makes sense. um yeah, so no age limit, just don't be a wanker or a dickhead. Make sure you're in good health. Sign the waiver and the medical declaration form honestly. Make sure that the information in there is correct, and then come along. So there will be some physical activity, there will be some stress, as I've mentioned, and all those other things. And then we will pivot and switch and delve into breaking things down, asking questions, both backwards and forwards, not all one way traffic, but obviously participants can ask us questions, and we'll ask candidates questions, or participants, I should say, questions on the training camps to get a bit of an idea. That data and information will help us in regards to our delivery. It will help us in regards to online resources eventually that will come about. And it will hopefully, ultimately, we hope that it will help the candidates, and we're pretty confident that it will help any candidates that are looking to participate. So, yeah, that's that. Is there accommodation as part of the camp? Great question. I should have probably. Oh, who knows? I mean, that sort of stuff is comes out in the joining instruction for those that sign up anyway. So I'll try and kill two birds with one stone here. First up, no, there's no like motel hotel accommodation set up for the training camp. If we're lucky, that's why the kit and equipment list that is provided in advance to participants, is so that you get your gear squared away, so that you've got a hoochie, like a small lightweight shelter that you can then use and set up, including your tent poles and your tent pegs. That you've got long enough string on the ends. So a military hoochie, or I've seen that company Twin Needle. I'm not associated or partnered with them, but they've got some great gear. I would gladly partner with them. But Twin Needle, they've got some cool stuff. They've got lightweight shelters. They've got a whole range of things. So check them out if you don't have it. If you're a civilian looking to prepare and you might not have some of that stuff, if you're a soldier, I'm assuming you're pretty much going to have everything on that kit list that has been sent out to those participants. And no, I'm not putting up the kit list beforehand. The kit list will be sent to those that go through the steps, do the waiver, do the medical, pay the fee. Then they'll get their kit list and equipment so that they can prepare in advance. So the sooner people, I suppose, complete those steps, the sooner they'll get their kit list, and then the more better prepared they can be. And then the joining instruction will be sent to participants about a week or 2 weeks before they arrive. So, oh, holy heck, I think I just went way off there. Oh, no, yeah, accommodation. So, no, don't expect any hotel or motel type booking. Make sure you got your lightweight shelter. Um, Depending on the weather, and or maybe just because of what we do on the camp, you may or may not get to use or sleep under your shelter. So, yeah, hopefully that answers that question for that person. Oh, yeah. So that's probably why I delved into the kit stuff. What do I need to bring for the camp? Yep. So I've just spoken about when you get the kit list. You won't be getting it before. We're not putting it up online. Um, and I'm not posting it in a YouTube post. So, actually, one thing I would mention, those that were following the reckoning, I'm pretty sure I put up a kit and equipment list for the reckoning. If you have a look at that, that's probably going to cover a good amount of it. But yeah, the kit list, there's a bit more to it for those that are coming along on the pre-selection camp. uh, how much physical activity is involved in the pre-selection camp? So, good question. How much physical activity is involved in the pre-selection camp? Let me just say there is a lot, yeah, a fair amount. But what I will say is that it is being conducted and done in a manner that is, um, what's the best way to put it? That you are not under pressure in the sense of if you don't meet a timing, that you fail and that you get removed from the camp. It doesn't work like that. It is not from the perspective of if you fail to meet a certain number of reps, that you fail and that you get removed from the camp. So none of that stuff is in there. So you can come along, participate. You may not necessarily be ready or anywhere near the physical requirements for the selection, whether that's New Zealand or Australia. So those mandatory sort of gatekeepers, for want of a better term, you might not be at that stage whereby you are capable yet of being able to pass those on the days when they happen in relation to the selection. But this camp will probably give you a good guide for that. If you are and you want to come along and you decide you want to push to the standard, or exceed the standard required for selection during the camp, that's okay as well. That won't be frowned upon, but just understand that there's no need to. You won't have to, but there will be quite a lot of physical activity involved. But then hopefully a nice balance between some of the discussions, the deep dive and learning, the theory in and around some of the navigation aspects, the kit and equipment, the foot care, and all those sort of tips and tricks, I suppose. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, there'll be a fair bit of physical activity. I'll just get through these. I'm not sure if there are any questions that have been coming through. Oh, what is this? Sorry. Oh, there are some blanking questions on here. I'll come to those, or some comments on here. I'll come to those when I when I get through these ones that are in front of me here. Actually, I don't think they're questions. It's just, yeah, just some comments. Where are we? Accommodation. We did that. Can females participate in these camps? That probably flows in, not right now, but into the next group of questions, which is predominantly female heavy. Uh, yes, females can participate in the camp if you want to, if that's what you're looking to do. So I don't know um, the person that sent this through, but if you're preparing for selection, 100%, like, I'd encourage you to come along. I'll talk about my comment thoughts around females and that serving in the unit there a little bit later, or maybe in this part now. But if you want to come and participate because you got plans on going on selection, by all means, come along. If you if you just want to come along because you're interested to get an insight and you're a female and you're wanting to think, you can still come along. But as far as how much value you'll get out of it, I suppose really depends on what it is that you may be coming there for. So, yeah, and I will answer the question now. In terms of my thoughts around females joining the unit, I would prefer personally, I think I've said this before, I'd prefer personally that females weren't in the combat role, whether that was infantry or SF. Um, just not necessarily because, well, not because, no, yeah, they're probably, maybe, I just don't think I just don't think it's a good place for a woman to be. Like that's the crux of it. Um, I Yeah, I'd hate to be like where I am now, sitting back and then But granted, I know that there's females in combat roles right now and doing awesome work and awesome jobs. That's awesome. Like much respect to those women that choose to do that and want to go that path. But yeah, just as a male, as a husband, as a father, I would rather, yeah, if we didn't have females in that space, and then it was males instead. So, not because I don't think they can't do the job, I just don't know how much extra value it adds. There are some key areas from a strategic perspective, maybe a hearts and minds community things that and intelligence gathering that it could 100% provide, but could that be done in other ways through other small groups and being embedded as part of combat patrol? Maybe that's the option instead. So I don't have all the answers. Not gonna I'm not going to crack all the answers here, but that's just my go that route. Any female that wants to, and that's what they're committed to, they can tip cap, much respect, and yeah, and crack on, get after it if that's what you want to do. All right. What is the number one reason you see people fail or drop out during selection? So that's in the reference guide. I list a few, well, we list a few things in that in there with regards to, and I think I put it as a snapshot in terms of some of the content that's in there. So yeah, you see a whole bunch of things in there, but those are probably some of the more common ones. People just not having the drive at the end of the day. They just, they realize or figure out in that moment. So this question here, number one reason, they usually just come to the realization that what they thought they wanted to do ultimately isn't compelling enough to make them want to keep going. So they quit. That's probably the biggest reason. And then there's some other reasons and stuff that I list that's in that reference guide and stuff as well. Um, would you offer navigation specific courses? Yeah, I'd look to offer that. I mean, navigation is a part of this training camp. So we'll be delving into that, some of the basics in and around the theory to give candidates a head start. Now, anybody that's coming to the camp that's already in the military, they may not necessarily need as much training in that space, and that's cool. That's understandable, but they may still get something out of that. It's not the camp isn't a navigation course. There's some time allocated to doing some theory, then getting out and doing some practical, and it's enough to give participants who are maybe potential future candidates on a selection course enough of a blueprint game plan to understand the basics of navigation and how to apply it no matter where they are from a military perspective as well. So yeah, so hopefully that helps answer that question. Would I run navigation specific courses? Actually in the process of looking to develop some of that stuff now, both online resources and then a combination of face-to-face, in person, and all that sort of stuff. So we'll see how that goes. Haven't got a time frame on that. So if anybody's getting excited, saying, "Oh, I can't wait to get on that," yeah, there's quite a bit on at the moment. So that's not super high on the agenda to create those online resources and then put it up at this stage. Plus, when that happens, I want to try to do that as well as I can, as well as a one-man band can, So there's a bit of work involved in there in line with everything else. So that's that one, but it will come. It'll come. Is the camp designed to weed people out? No. Or is it purely developmental for those serious about the actual selection? Yeah. You just so I'm hopefully I've tried to explain that as well enough during the two videos where I did the initial announcement and then the April one, and then a follow up with regards to all the dates that are out for the rest of this year up to November. So yeah, it's developmental, not purely. So we've got there, so probably not 100% accurate in terms of my response to your question, but definitely more so developmental, capability building, building increased technical ability, mental ability, confidence, all those sorts of things going into selection. And I think also for those that, and coming back to that other question, number one reason where people, I guess, lose their drive. Sometimes it may not be the case where people lose their drive to want to be there. Maybe in that moment, if they've decided to withdraw or quit from a selection in that moment, maybe it's like, oh yeah, this is too hard, or this isn't what I expected, or I can't do this, or maybe they feel like I can't go on anymore, but I want to come back here. So the camp would definitely help bring to the forefront for those people that might be in two minds or second guessing, or maybe contemplating whether or not they should go back on selection, or potentially better prepare those candidates who are going on it first time, who may hit that wall, go, okay, yeah, I have an understanding that I was probably going to hit this point in the selection, and it seems like I'm getting to that point now, or I'm hitting it now. they could potentially reflect back on the camp in that moment and go, okay, like just start regulating themselves, try to bring their breathing, slow their breathing down, etc., etc., and then just start thinking through where they're being present, understanding where they're at now, and what they can or should be looking at doing to then carry on. Breaking things down into those smaller moments. That's one of the things I think that was in part of the screenshot as well for the entire selection. Easier said than done. So I think I put that in there too. It is much easier said than done. Trying to break grueling, miserable, real crappy moments down into smaller, crappier moments, or maybe not crappier, but into smaller crap moments. It's yeah, it's definitely easier said than done. Could you say it's a skill? I get asked that a fair few times. If it's a skill, I don't know where I learnt it personally, other than mum forcing me to do jobs that I didn't want to do. And maybe just looking at the bigger picture going, I can't wait to go play with my friends. I can't wait to go ride my bike or whatever once this bloody stink thing is done. Maybe all those little things added up and over time, who knows? But it is easier said than done, but it can be done. Is probably the main thing. So I love the way Bill Bestick spoke about it way back when I interviewed him, and he shared, I can't remember his exact words, but he articulates it and explains it much better than likely what I'm doing right now in terms of breaking things down. So I, yeah, have a look at that video if you're wanting to get a bit of an idea of what he said. Unfortunately, I think from memory that interview was about 3 hours long, so I don't know which part of, and there's no timestamps in it. So good luck trying to find that portion. But he does talk about it, and he's an incredibly intelligent, humble human being. So, um, what is the one piece of kit people always run? I don't know if I want to mention that, because then those that sign up, that's going to be like the first thing that they put in their kit. Uh, Let me think about that before I answer it. I've got the answer right off the top of my head as soon as I read that. Um, but yeah, I don't know that I want to give the answer away. So yeah, I don't think I will. But who knows? I might change my mind by the end of the video. If you see at some point, I'll look to try to get to it. Even then, I'm not promising that I'll answer it. But yeah, maybe, possibly. If someone isn't selection fit yet, should they come on these pre-selection camps? Oh yeah, so I've already mentioned that. Should they come? That's a matter of personal choice, opinion, perspective, whatever. Um, you may feel uncomfortable if you are not as prepared as what you might like. But I think the other important part is understanding, and I know I felt this way in both the New Zealand and the Australian selection. I never felt 100% ready physically for it. I knew that I could meet the requirements of all the physical elements required to progress on the selection. Because back then, if you failed one, there was no retest. Like that was it. You were a one and done, and then like come back next year sort of thing, or come back on the next selection. So I felt confident from that perspective. But a question that I've been asked in some of the mentoring that I provide as well to people that have asked if I ever did a full day one of back to back of all the physical requirements that we were going to be tested against on the selection course. The answer is no, I didn't. I might have done maybe two or three, or maybe a couple. Maybe three is probably a bit of a stretch in terms of the physical prep. They were more so done individually, and I did them also individually so that I could give myself a really comfortable, but well, what I felt like was a comfortable buffer for me anyway. That I knew that come testing time on the day of selection, when those activities needed to be done, that I was not going to be redlining when I was going to do those, even though we're going to be now doing them all within a condensed period of time and on the same day, which is not how I trained for the selection in terms of those testing elements. I trained pretty hard and at a really good intensity for me, whereby I knew that I was comfortably coming in under the times that were needed, and I was comfortably doing more than the required reps that were necessary to pass those activities, if that makes sense. Where are we? So, sorry, to finish off your question, should they come on these pre-selection camps anyway to learn the standard, or wait until they are ready? Personal preference. No need to be, what I would say is this, no need to be whakama or shy if you're not quite where you want to be. Like I said, you're not going to get booted off, and there will be some elements where we're, like I've said enough times, inflicting the type of environment, so you get that exposure and then dialing it back. So it'll probably be maybe not so much in those moments where we are applying the pressure a bit more, but definitely throughout those 36 to 48 hours, it's probably going to be the nicest version of a selection course you will participate in. Let's put it that way. So there will be some laughs, no doubt, at some stages, but then there will be other times where you will need to switch on, and so you'll need to get out of that jovial, laughing mood. And yeah, we've had the laugh, we've had the debrief, we've dissected that, we've spoken about it. You've got some tools, resources that you can now use. Now it's time for you to switch on again, and we're back into this next stage. And then we'll, chop and change like that. So, yeah, it's being shy, embarrassed, worried, concerned. All of those things are normal. And if you are worried about that and don't want to come to this camp, it's probably going to be 10 times worse before you go on the actual selection, right? So maybe it might be an opportunity for those that might be feeling that way, feeling underdone, feeling underprepared, feeling worried, concerned, whatever, to utilize the training camp to get a bit of a gauge and a feel for what would that environment be like? What could I expect to hear? What sort of body language could I expect to see from the directing staff? And then unpacking that a little bit to help boost the understanding and maybe a little bit of confidence in the process. So anyway, I'll come to the chat actually, because these next ones might take a little bit of time. That was the other reason why I jumped on here, because I didn't know how long these are going to take me to get through. Switch over. Oh, heck. Oh, was watching Tier 1 Pod, then saw you live. Hope you're... Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. Yeah, Brent Tucker. That dude is... Oh, is he? Okay. Tier 1 Pod, live with Brent Tucker. Yeah. That guy's... I don't know him, but he's runs a tight ship over there and got some great guests and all sorts of stuff that he's doing. So what did you blow up now? Nothing, just busy. Billy, spare boots, laces, in case you forget hoochie strings. Good tip, very good tip. And yeah, I'm not going to give away what you've just mentioned as well there, Billy. So thank you for that. Great tip. Where are we? Oh, it's one of those kit lists. Don't skip an item. None of them will be used. Yeah, possibly, but yeah, no, there'll definitely be a lot of use for what they'll be using on the camp. What's this? What got you to not quit selection even when it got to its hardest points? I did a couple of videos, or maybe a video. One, like, it's all I wanted to do from the age I was 14 when I first came across the book. So that was always there. Even though I was in school, I did go right through till I finished high school. Then just, I was working part-time, then working full-time right up until I joined the army. So that drive, desire to want to serve there never left. And then when things got hard during selection, both NZ and Australia, I think I've shared this in other videos and maybe in some of those, or maybe it's been in Q&A videos or whatever. But it was more around what I was going through there in those moments. It was never about me. I started to imagine that we needed to get to troops that needed a resupply, or that were in a worse position than what I was in, or than what we were in at the time as a little selection group or cohort or team. And that if we didn't get there, that, this was just me going off in my own head, as you weren't allowed to talk or talk to anybody. That if we didn't get there, that those dudes weren't going to make it. So that for me was a powerful driver, and it kept me going to the point where even in those moments where it was miserable, I don't recall ever thinking about quitting. on selection, not in NZ, not in Australia. It didn't matter how miserable it got or how crappy the task was or how tired or hungry or sore we were or I was. I don't recall. Maybe I did in the haze of all of that stuff, but I can't um, coherently right now and or since selection think of a time during selection in NZ or Australia where I went, man, I want to quit. I've had enough. So, and sometimes some people are just, I don't know, are wired that way and don't think about it. I know a few other guys that share the same thing. They never once thought about quitting. They didn't necessarily have the same sort of scenarios running in their head as I did. They just kept moving. They just kept talking to themselves in a positive way, saying that they can do this. I don't recall talking to myself in a positive way, saying I've got this, I can do this either. Again, just the differences of some of the similarities of people that make it in, but also some of the, I suppose, some of the differences that people use to try to get through. Hopefully that helps answer that one anyway while I was here. Um, it's not a fail, it's a heads up on how much more work you need to do. Priceless knowledge. Yeah, great point. Rubber Kiwi. Yep, absolutely. I agree with that. Um, yeah, that ties in with a video that I did not too long ago, but I don't think it's up yet, so maybe in the next day or two. But yeah, bang on. Not a fail, a heads up. It gives an insight as well during the camp. I'm not sure if it's common knowledge. Maybe it's more common knowledge to those in the military, but at least here in NZ, and I believe possibly in Australia as well, based on some people that I'm lucky enough to interact with and got insight and information on. I believe there are a set number of attempts whereby candidates can try to join the unit or apply for selection now. Now, whether you withdraw at your own request or whether you are removed or whether you're medically unable to continue, there is still a set number. So if I went on selection these days and I had to be withdrawn for a medical reason, that's that's one attempt of the limited number of attempts that I have to use to go on selection. So that's important, and we'll talk about that sort of stuff during the camp and that as well. Excuse me. And I think, yeah, I'm probably undecided in terms of my thoughts on limiting the amount of attempts that a person can have. Um, just probably because I know how young and dumb I was when I went for selection in NZ, and I was still pretty young by the time. I was only it was still only 3 years after I'd finished, or actually 2000, 2001, 2001. It was only about 2 years after I'd come off the cycle in NZ, got returned to unit before I went on selection again. So again, still young and dumb. And I just think that there is a lot of growth from 20 years old to, well, even to where I am now as 47, turning 48, but to um, people in their 30s, early 30s, mid 30s, maybe even late 30s. I think there's a lot of growth and wisdom, maturity that comes within that time frame, understandably. And so, if somebody maybe who was young and I shouldn't say dumb, but young and keen, maybe naive is might be a bit better term. If they're young and naive and just super keen, and maybe they use up all their chances in those earlier years where they may still be developing, or in my case, I was definitely still developing, but where they may still be developing. And then by the time they hit a stride or they hit a period of their life whereby, some of those bad habits are gone, they're more settled, they're more mature, whatever, skillful, brainy, who knows, all of that sort of stuff. And they've already used those opportunities. I think the units potentially miss out on a a super high, potentially super high caliber and quality candidate, if that makes sense, because now they've where they are now from where they were, they bring all that experience and wisdom and stuff with them now, and probably skills and expertise in other areas or basic soldiering or advanced soldiering. And yeah, and that could be a real asset, um, value add to those types of units. So anyway, that's my bloody rant on that. Probably went a lot longer than I should have. Uh, Youngling host proper considering joining the ADF reserves, but I really don't think I'm that smart. Reckon they care too much about that. Hey, if they employed me, then they're probably not. No, no. So that clearly the academic side of things for the Defence Force, from what I understand, is I'd say it seems like it's more it seems like there's a bit more of a focus on that these days than what it was when I was going through. Um, so yeah, I'd say it's important. I think I think the ADF do care about it, whether it's reserves or full time. But I don't. I think it's easy enough to get through. Like, I failed my school certificate, and that was a requirement to get into the army in New Zealand at the time when I went through. So the recruit sergeant told me. So I went back and reset it. Just scraped through the second time, but it can be done. And I suppose if you want it bad enough, if it's whether it's just to go into the army, just to go into the army or the reserves in this case, or whatever it is, if you want it bad enough, like you'll flip the switch and you'll make the adjustments and you'll do what you need to do. So I do think education is an important part, even more so these days. And me trying to encourage any of my children that are in the Defence Force to and or not in the Defence Force, like the importance of that education, because I know the opportunities that it can provide for them. Um, I'm going to continue to try to encourage them in that space and try to do what I can to grow and progress in what I do as well. So, what's this one, Billy? On another note, log on to the Auckland War Memorial online, cenotaph, and lay a poppy for Murray Rakina Hudson GC. 52 years today. He died at Wairu Grenade Range. Oh, thank you for that, Billy. Respect, bro. And yeah, rest in peace. Murray Rakina Hudson, GC. 52 years today. Respect. What do we got? Rabakiwi, how dumb or smart a man is depends entirely on where he's standing. A brain surgeon is a complete idiot when it comes to calculating a range azimuth for 105 millimeter howitzer. Yeah. Very good point. For me, the military was never about taking lives. That's part of the job. You do it to save lives. I did anyway. Yeah, awesome. Cool points. Is this Sadi? No, Australian Reserves does not care how smart you are. If I can do it, your drink bottle could. Cheers, Sadi. Appreciate you, brother. In certain units, we're more about tika heart. And if you're watching this, it's probably you. We'd be stoked to have you on deck, mate. There you go. Youngling Ghost. No better words of encouragement and advice and first-hand experience, current as well, than from Sadi 540. Join the infantry and work your way to one of the trades. School certificate. My ass. Yeah, yeah. Oops, GM it should be. Oh, GM. Okay. Thank you, Billy. I think that's all of those. Cool. Appreciate those. I'm going to crack on with these questions that have come through. Got a couple more chunks. So this one's in regards to training females for SAS selection. So there have been a number of queries that have come through. I'd say probably maybe not quite a dozen, but more than what I expected anyway. So there was a handful of females when I had the Google form and was just meeting with people that expressed an interest in that space, in the SF space. And so maybe there's a few more that, well, clearly there's a few more that may be interested in that path, and hence what I mentioned earlier. But anyway, that aside, do you provide training mentorship for females who may want to do selection? I do. Am I currently, though, working with females specifically who are preparing for selection? The answer is no. So, yep, I do. I'd provide mentorship as best I can for anybody that's genuinely looking to go onto selection, regardless of my thoughts in and around a female joining the unit or not. It's not because I'm precious about and not wanting females to get through and pass. It's not that at all. Yeah, I guess it's just from a male female perspective, being a husband and a father and that sort of thing. So that's probably where that's coming from, and maybe that's not a good enough answer, but it's the only answer I've got. What do you think the chances are realistically of a female passing SA selection? I think they're about as realistic as anybody who puts their hand up to attempt selection, if they've prepared well enough and if it's something that they actually want to do. So yeah, that's my take on it. If they want to be there bad enough, they'll go through those first steps, those prerequisites, whatever they are, the EOY or expression of interest. They'll go through whatever steps are after that. They'll prepare physically. They'll make the sacrifices. They'll turn up every day and put in the work prior to the start line, and they'll turn up, and the results will be what they are, win, lose, or draw with regards to the selection. So that's my take on it. If you're asking, characteristics wise and physical traits, are females at a disadvantage? Yeah, that's my honest take. They're typically not carrying as much size, and or strength as a male. Typically, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of females out there that'll kick my backside and that are much stronger than me, and fitter and faster and stronger, etc. But for the selection, oh, sorry, not but, in regards to the selection though, I've I personally haven't seen any of those types of women that are fitter, faster, stronger than me on a selection, if that makes sense. And also at the same time, I've seen plenty of men that are bigger, fitter, faster, stronger than me, who quit selection, right? So you've heard many people talk about those dynamics when it comes to the selection, and people um, choosing to stay and continue, and those who choose not to. And it's usually, people that aren't big and strong and super fit and fast and all that sort of stuff. They have a level of capability and competence and that sort of thing, and physically they're prepared enough to be able to meet the requirements, but they're not necessarily the fastest, and they're not necessarily winning every sort of event that's made up during the course of the selection. Have there been any females who have passed selection NZ or Australia? Not that I know of. I will talk about this. So Monica Georgieva is a person, I don't know her, is a lady that I've just come across, heard through one of the members of the school community, actually, who put me onto this female. She attempted the commando selection, and she's attempted the Australian SASR selection twice. So there's 3 selections there for any males that might be watching, or just anybody in general, male or female, that might be watching this live or may stumble across it. This one particular female, I would love to meet this lady and just pick her brain. But I've also listened to 2 of the podcasts that she's done. She's on a podcast with Tim Curtis and Ben Pronk, the Unrelenting 60, I think it's called. So she's on there. I forget which episode it is. And then she's also on the 98 Gym podcast, episode 7 from memory. Monica Georgieva, really interesting lady to hear. It's just an audio podcast, so there's no video of her, but they break a lot of that down from her upbringing through going into the Australian Defence Force to doing selection, etc., etc. So don't quote me on this as well, but if I heard correctly, the commando selection, she failed, I think, day 1 of the testing, which is surprising. She failed the run. So when usually in Australia, when they're talking about the run, they're talking about that 3.2. It's not usually talking about the 2.4. The 2.4 is one of those testing gateways, but the 3.2 is usually the run that gets referred to. So it sucks, man. It's hard. Sub 16 minutes to be carrying 8 kilos webbing plus your 4-kilo weapon in uniform, in boots. It's a miserable bloody activity to do. And those of you that have seen some of the posts where you see me up in the top corner, blanking, shaved head and uniform, and my webbing is sort of half coming around my waist, and I've got my weapon down on my left hand in that image, and my mouth is bloody open. Like, that was from the 3.2 run, and that must have been on the stretch home where I just scraped in under 16 minutes. So anyway, off topic there, but back to her. She passed it, like, she, with room to spare. She passed the 3.2, just the entry to get onto the commando course, if I was listening and heard that correctly. So bearing in mind, again, like I've said in other videos or other lives, I've never done the commando selection course, but she passed that 3.2 at 15:40, I think she said. Like I ran 15:55 on the SSR selection. So she would have cleaned me up. She's 5 foot nothing from what I've heard. Like again, I've not seen her. I don't know her. And she weighed, I think she said she put on weight to try to get there and weighed about 56 kilos. So you put that into context, 56 kilos, 8 kilos webbing, 4 kilo rifle, trousers, uniform, boots, running 3.2 with those little short legs. And I'm nothing mass super tall, right? Like I'm 183 centimeters. So I think that might just be 6 foot, or maybe it's 5'11" or something like that. But it, yeah, that I could just imagine when she said that 1540, I was like, man, I would have been looking at her heels. She would have been in front of me. So she passed it prior to the actual commando testing, and then I think she said it might have been, I can't remember. I think she said a couple of months gap between doing that little barrier to get onto the commando selection before actually stepping onto the commando selection testing start line proper. And then unfortunately on day one, when she had the 3.2 to do again, because you got to do it again. It's part of the test. Now you're doing the actual testing. She come in over 16 minutes. So um, yeah, shame for her, because then she went on a whole bunch of other stuff, but she went on, fast forward to the SASR selection, got to day 9 on her first attempt, went away, must have been less than a year or the very next year. So might have still been less than a year, depending on which selection she did in the year. And then she went on it again and got to day 12. So basically halfway of the Australian selection, which is 21 days. So a little over halfway she got to before she withdrew. So from my understanding, I think she withdrew both times. But amazing, eh? So these questions that have come through in and around females, querying mentorship, asking chances of realistically getting through. Do I know of anybody that's passed? Look up Monica Georgieva on. I haven't seen any videos of her. I've just heard those 2 audio podcasts. So the Unrelenting 60 with Tim Curtis and Ben Pronk, and 98 Gym with Kev. I think his name is Kevin Toonan. So again, I was put onto her and those, onto Kev's podcast by one of the members in the school community. Really glad I listened to both of those. Sounds like an incredible woman, good role model and inspiring for, I would imagine, other females that might be wired that way. She shares some pretty cool stories and some some funny stories and stuff as well in her interview. So I won't talk about those on here. Oh yeah, so the rest of that question, why I jumped in there with the story about her is because it's the person that asked about anybody that's passed. I heard there was a female who attempted Australian selection and she got through to day 15 or something. Is that right? So I didn't know that. But yeah, from what I've seen and what I've heard, she speaks about day 9 and day 12 of where she got to. There might be, maybe there's another female candidate that got to day 15. What specific physical benchmark should a female candidate aim for to be selection ready? The exact same as what's already out. So no different. Aim for those as the minimum and then plus. So from a male perspective, like if we use push-ups as an example and the cadence push-ups, if the required number is 40, most guys are aiming for 50 plus. Some guys might aim for 60 plus. Okay, that's cool. So in regards to this question, female should aim for the same. Aim for 50 plus or aim for 60 plus. So no different. You're having to carry the same weights. You're having to do the same times. You're having to perform all the same exercises exactly the same way as any male on the course. So you should be aiming for the same things. In your opinion, what is the biggest mental barrier for women entering this male-dominated environment? That is a cool question. I think the initial one that comes to mind is probably the female's perception of what she's walking into. And I can only imagine, well, I probably can't even, oh, yeah, maybe to a degree, imagine if it was reversed and something and a male is walking into an environment where it's just all females. So if a male holds that thought and thinks and can relate that to what that must be like for a female walking into a male dominated environment, and yeah, just that perception of looking Monica did talk about she's looking at, these guys, big guys, fit guys, strong guys, 80 plus kilo guys look like they can, just throwing the pack around when they're picking it up off the ground. That's when you're fresh, right? And you sort of first day or two, maybe if you're lucky. And then she's, spoke about how she was still there after a lot of those big, strong looking guys, 80 plus to 90 plus kilo guys pulled the pin, left. So I think perception is probably, I would say, is probably one of the biggest ones or potential barriers for females coming onto selection, and learning how to put that aside. So that's why I recommend, for these series of questions that have come through from females, check out and look up Monica Georgieva and have a listen to her and her story. Now, she's probably, I'll be honest, she's probably the exception to the rule. when when I listen to her speak, and I've heard some of the experiences that she shared and that she's been through, but also her mindset. She was into guns, she was into soldiering, she loved infantry stuff. Like, I don't know any females that love infantry work, but I could hear it in her voice when she's speaking, and it's like, man, yeah, that's like talking to or listening to one of the guys that loves soldiering and loves being out in the bush and that loves that infantry type work. And I, without having met her or seen her, I could pick up on that vibe just listening to her speak. So that's probably why I say she's probably the exception to the rule, right? There's probably not too many females that are out there that are wired that way. I could be wrong. There may be a heck of a lot more than I realize, and that wouldn't be the first time if I'm wrong about something, eh? But yeah, that's probably the biggest part in terms of mental barrier for women. Um, all that stuff, not only the perception, but all that stuff, I think, ties back into maybe some of the concerns and worries where they are from a physical perspective, like their physical strength, their endurance, just the body to weight ratios when you're doing the numbers. So, you're carrying a 35 to 40 to 50 kilo plus pack. Then you've got your webbing, then you've got your rifle, then you're carrying some other bloody piece of equipment that the directing staff need you to carry. And you're either carrying that collectively as you try to build some sort of makeshift contraption to pile as much heavy stuff as you can so that you can share the load, and there's still stuff left over. So it's still a 20-liter jerry can. It's still a whole bunch of star pickets or a dolly or some bloody concertina wire that's going to stab you somewhere. And you've got to pick that stuff up and you've got to carry it along still with your weapon pack, webbing, everything else, and move alongside. And then you've got to rotate into lifting and carrying things, as people need a break from carrying the heavier collective objects that are put together. That's a lot for not only just males, but for a female to be having that weigh on their mind and then be willing to step into that and put up their hand and say, "Here I am. I'm going to give that a crack. I didn't get through. Here I am. I'm going to do it again." So, for a male to do that, for anybody to do that, has my respect. But those are some of the things that I think a female looking to go down that path needs to be super comfortable with and have a real good understanding of the reality of that. And as much as possible within your build up and preparation and training, you need to find ways to get yourself exposure to that type of feeling, being weighed down, being super fatigued, like very little sleep, nothing in your guts to eat, and running on fumes. Now, I'm not suggesting, from a safety perspective, I'm not suggesting you go out and do that, because that could be detrimental to anybody, male or female. But there are ways of accumulating that type of fatigue, that type of mental resilience that it takes to push to get up and go the next day, to get up and then finish to do your training in the morning, to then do your full-time job, and then to get up and go again in the afternoon or in the evening. There are ways that you can factor that in more safely, and a lot smarter these days than what probably people my vintage might have done. So, yeah, I think you need to experience that, and or at least try to get close to what that feels like before you get on selection. Because in my opinion, my experience, that gave me a really good understanding of whether or not I wanted to do it or not, or whether or not it was just a fairy tale. So that's what I'll say about that piece. Um, how does your mentorship handle the reality of load bearing requirements, which is often the biggest? Oh, yeah, I just spoke about this physical hurdle for smaller frames. Um, so, mentorship handle the reality of load bearing. Probably just the same as what I just spoke about. Trying to do that a bit smarter these days. Not going out and trying to experience what that's like being sleep deprived and hungry and having no energy and carrying heavy weight, because you run a higher risk of injuring yourself, right? So that's not what I'm trying to advocate for or preach here. But there are much better ways which I delve into with some of the males that I'm fortunate enough to work with. Not all of them. Some of them are at different levels in terms of their ability and what they're capable of doing. Others not so much. Others are starting from a much more beginner, I would say, type base and trying to build from there. So the mentoring would be pretty similar to how I guide the men. And why? Because, well, they're going into the same job. And although the physiology and the structure and the makeup and all that sort of stuff and the physical characteristics may be very different, or not, maybe they are very different, the requirements are the same. And so how you get to meeting those requirements and the pathway to try to get those, although it may be different, it needs to end up with the same result, if that makes sense. The both male or female, regardless of who's doing the selection, needs to be able to perform the end goal to the same standard, to the minimum standard at the very minimum. But it doesn't necessarily matter. Well, it doesn't matter how they get there. Yeah, not no, there's no drugs or anything involved. Bloody hell, I'm not smart enough to be advising people on what drugs to take. uh, Hopefully that answers that question. How does your mentorship handle the reality of load bearing? Yeah, just being honest about it. Like, talk with the person and then getting an understanding. Like, the mentorship is a two-way partnership, right? It's not a one-way traffic where I'm just transmitting the whole time, like what I'm doing here on this live. But I have to transmit here on the live because, well, there's just me on here, and then I try and interact and get to the questions or the chat later. So anyway, that's beside the point. There is, during the mentorships, I need to get an understanding of where the individual's at, male or female. But as I've said, I'm not working with any females at the moment, not for selection. Uh, if a female candidate fails on the first go, what guidance would you give them? Yeah, get up and go again. No difference to what I would give to anybody else. So if you want to do it, that is. If you have identified that that's really what you want to do, regardless of whether you quit or you got removed from selection for being too slow or you injured yourself, if that's where you want to be, like, that's the most important question first that you need to be able to answer for yourself, regardless of who you are, regardless of whether you're male or female. You need to be able to answer that question honestly for yourself. And so, to anybody that's failed, if you fail it, then start going through that, maybe look at reframing that, the experience. I think Rubber Kiwi put up there, an experience, a learning opportunity. Reframe that first. If that's really still where you want to be, then start building momentum again. Identify, and that starts with identifying where you went wrong or what you could have done better. Or, yeah, did you take shortcuts in your preparation? Did you not do enough? Whatever the case might be. And then once you've identified those with that newfound experience of having gone on selection and not getting the outcome that you wanted, then applying that, starting to apply those learnings and then rebuild again, maintain that consistency and then crack on, go back and do it again if that's where you want to be. Right, we'll go through these last ones. How long has that been? Like nearly an hour. Okay, nearly an hour of me just on send, just on transmit. Regarding the SAS selection reference guide. All right. Comment here. I purchased your selection guide this week. It's awesome. Would you consider doing one for the cycle of training and another one for once you're actually in the SAS? Um, no, no, I don't think so. I mean, well, I doubt it. I think the people that I'm lucky enough to work with would probably be the same. I don't think there's. Let me speak with the crew and ask for their thought. My initial gut feeling when I read that was nah, which I've just shared here. But who knows? Let me speak with them. Actually, this is probably a good segue into a thought that's just come to mind. I probably wouldn't have even done the reference guide if it wasn't for some of the encouragement and advice from uh, former members and guys that are still in the mix. So um, yeah, so maybe I've jumped the gun too quick again, like I did before. The reference guide stuff even came out. So cycle and once you're actually in, yeah, I'll speak with the team. My initial thought, but that was the same for the reference guide, as I said, was a no. So anyway, we'll see. Um, how did you come up with these areas of topics? Pretty easy, with the guys, former members. So combination of my experience, former members, and current members that are in the mix there. So based on what they've been seeing, some of the things that haven't changed since however long it's been going, and yeah, and some of the things that they're starting to see or trying to anticipate, trying to get a front foot on. Some of that stuff, actually, the lead stuff, we didn't really, I don't think we really put too much into that reference guide in and around some of the potential, not they're not lead indicators, that's not the right term, but things that have sporadically sort of popped up, but aren't as consistent as the stuff that's in the reference guide. So hopefully that makes sense. But that's how we came up with the areas and the topics. Which chapter was the hardest for you to write because it forced you to relive a difficult memory? Which chapter? I think every oh, let's clarify. Chapter, like it's broken up into, like, you can fit everything in on one page in terms of the chapter itself, So I think everything forced me to relive bad memories from when we've gone through there. Which one was the hardest? I don't know if there was one that was. I don't think that thought came to mind, really. It's just a bit of banter and laughter and some memories and some, oh, yeah, I remember that. And when you're talking about something and then you start to feel something, a twinge in your back or in your hamstring or in your leg or something, or in your heart, you start to, yeah, have some flashbacks maybe. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't got an answer for you in terms of which chapter was the hardest. So anyway, um, cycle of training. Why is that phase often harder than selection itself? I think, and this is just me speaking personally here, not speaking on behalf of former members or those still in the mix right now. Training's harder, I think, more for a number of reasons. One of the, or a couple of the ones that stand out is the constant pressure from the directing staff. So even though I've mentioned I felt more comfortable in Australia, there was still that sort of feeling out phase, and I think you're trying to trick me, you buggers, but then figured out that they weren't. But then understanding, even though there was that environment where I could call directing staff by their nickname or by their first name, the reality was they're still observing everything. They were still making sure that is this person, is this candidate still the same type of person, even though we relax the environment a little bit. Or I shouldn't, relax isn't the right word. Even though we've created this type of environment, which we find better enables the learning of the candidates that are in this phase of wanting to progress towards the unit. Versus NZ, I was always walking on eggshells, always like just really worried and concerned about, about everything. I remember one time we were in Helwan camp on the patrol procedures course. I don't I don't know. I'm pretty sure he's out now, but hopefully, with respect, he won't mind me using his name here. But he was one of the directing staff for a portion of the patrol procedures, and I'm pretty sure he was a sergeant by then. And I'm pretty sure he's out now. I hope he is anyway. Actually, maybe I won't say his name just because he might not be, and then I might get a kick in the backside next time I see him, even though he's a lot older than me. But anyway, I remember we were walking out. At Helwan Camp, part of the patrol procedures, going over to what was the little mess area. He was standing off to the side, come out of the little barracks, started heading over. I made the mistake of well, I didn't think it was a mistake, but I was walking out, and you come out the door, you're going outside, sort of scan the area, have a look around. I come out, had a look around, and I locked eyes with this particular directing staff member at the time. And he was just standing there leaning on like a fence type thing, leaning over towards where we were all coming out. And I must have locked eyes for far too long. And I looked, he looked at me, and then just straight away, it seemed like instantly, it's like, how you sort of look and then bang, he's talking straight away. So I look, and then he goes, "What are you looking at, ball bag?" And I was like, "Oh, nothing, stuff." And then just, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to look. I didn't know what I had done wrong. I was just like, "Oh, bloody hell." And I laugh about it now. We cracked up when we got over to the mess. We weren't laughing there, but the guys that I was with, they knew who he was talking to, which was me, because I was the one silly enough to look over that direction for a split second, and it was long enough to, um, yeah, be called out. What are you looking at, you ball bag? And so I didn't try to not do that again. I don't remember anything like that happening again, but that's just one aspect. It's funny now, but I tell you what, it wasn't funny when I was going through it. So the cycle, there's that element, the DS, the pressure, and then the other main part, equally important, is the learning curve. Um, the courses are back to back to back, and there was very little rest in terms of recharge to get ready for the next course. We got the odd weekends off here and there with regards to recharging, but then you were back at it the very next week on the Monday. Some courses ran 7 days a week, so there was no reprieve, so to speak. And so, from that perspective, cycle, there is a heck of a lot of information to take in. They're testing that as well. So, can you absorb and consume all this information well? And can you apply it to the minimum standard, if not higher than the minimum standard, and do that safely? So, everything before health and safety was a thing, health and safety was embedded into, well, before health and safety was as big a thing as it is these days, I should say. Health and safety was already inherently embedded into everything that the unit does, that both the New Zealand and the Australian unit does, from weapon handling, from where that weapon is pointing, to just everything, the use of explosives, how you enter through a window, through a wall, through a door, when you're parachuting, when you're abseiling out of a chopper or fast roping, just, yeah, how you do things. There was always a heavy safety element in that, because with that, you're about to be trusted in a high tempo environment with live rounds and live munitions, live explosives, and timings and communications, etc., critical. So that's, some of the reasons why I found the cycle of training much harder than the selection itself. So here, what is the one myth about selection that your guide finally puts to bed? um, the one myth about selection that your guide finally puts to bed. I think off the top of my head, without, I don't know that it calls it out directly, but I think if candidates or people who are interested in the reference guide, I think if they read it and they read between the lines, particularly when it comes to the pro tips section, after an explanation of a particular topic, then the why around that, and then the pro tip in relation to those things. Well, I shouldn't say it's not just a pro tip. There's like, it says pro tip, but then there's a bloody gaggle of a string of tips, for want of a better term, or tips, to help candidates navigate that space. So, coming back to the question, myth wise, was it one myth about selection? I think when people read it, um, and I don't care if people go, "Oh, I don't need to read the guide now." Neither here nor there. Hopefully, it provides value for people that want to get a bit better insight and want to prepare better. But on there, I think it puts to bed the myth that you just have to survive. Okay, so that you just have to survive selection. You just have to not quit. You just have to be there at the end. You hear that a lot from people, and I'll tell you what, there is a degree of truth to that. Don't get me wrong. There is 100% a degree of truth to that statement, but the myth around that is in terms of how you survive, how you get to the finish line, how you present when you're at the end, what you're like, when you survived, you're here. Are you a bag of shit at the end? Were you a sack of spuds throughout the selection during it, and you just managed to survive purely because you just didn't quit, but you were useless at everything else? Was your attitude and your conduct really poor? Did it appear to the directing staff and to your colleagues that you're on selection with that you weren't very well liked, that the directing staff were raising their eyebrow about you because you just looked like you were just bludging like a leech, sucking off everybody else's energy, just resting where you could, and everybody else is doing the work? So I think I don't go into that sort of detail or off on that sort of rant in the reference guide. But if anything, I think that guide will hopefully make that clear. Like, it's not enough to just survive selection. It's, yeah, that is part of it, but it is not enough. And if you think you can just rock up to the end because you didn't quit, and that you can then go, yep, I've earned a place to go on cycle, you'll be found out, and you'll be sadly mistaken, and you'll be car keets, bro. See you later. Head back to your unit. Um, One last thing that I'll share here, and again, this is respectfully from one of the people that is a member within the school community. Really, really smart guy. But he shared a colleague of his who did the Australian selection 3 times. 3 times, passed, completed all three, got to the end all 3 times. Now, I can't remember the exact order of how things went, but it was sort of similar to this. So don't quote me on it, but it was sort of similar to this from what I remember from our conversation. One is that when that person passed the first time, they just survived. They were just hanging on, and they didn't get accepted. They got a bit of a brief without going into all the details that that wasn't good enough. Like, well done, completing and getting to the end of selection, but not good enough, essentially. Second time, completed. 21 days again, passed selection, got to the end. Again, not good enough from the perspective of attitude characteristics. Like, those things are important. So well done again, got to the end, but no, not accepted for further training, not good enough. And then the third time was, from what I understand, what I remember, I think was fairly similar to 1 and 2. Congratulations, getting to the end. You are clearly somebody that is prepared to put up with and can just grind through the hurt. 63 days of selection, not including the barrier testing that he would have done to get onto the actual selection itself. So 21, 21, and 21, those 60 odd days worth of testing on the selection, not including the barrier test just to get onto it, which is, probably 2 or 3 days, something like that, maybe longer these days, and not picked up, not recommended for further training. So, to that question, long-winded answer to that last question there. Yeah, the myth around just survive, just get to the end, just don't quit, bro, and you'll be good. You give yourself a chance. There is some truth to that. Don't quit, get to the end, you give yourself a chance. But don't think it's just about surviving. Don't think you can be a twat and expect to progress. Don't think you can be a bludger and expect to hide behind while everybody else is doing the work, and you're just making facial expressions to try and make it look like you're working, or being a DS watcher and expect to get through. Don't be the guy that people don't like in your team, because you're not smart enough or capable of reading the room to get a gauge of the pulse, to get a gauge of what you're projecting or putting out, and how you're being picked up or perceived. Yeah. So that's a long-winded answer to that question. Don't worry, I think, but I'm biased. I think there's a heck of a lot more value and insights in that guide. And then those that actually, the part around the camps and the guide, this last part, this isn't a question, this is just a comment to try to connect the dots, and I'm glad I just remembered. A number of people have grabbing the guide to use that as, I suppose, homework. Was what one of the guys mentioned. Oh, by the way, I'd like to grab the guide so I can use that as a bit of a reference and some homework before the camp. So that's pretty cool, right? I think that's cool anyway. It's says a lot in terms of a person or anybody wanting to genuinely prepare for something, who's willing to put in the time, effort, and energy, and put in the work. We're probably in a generation these days where it's very easy and we just want to get things fast, much like the Q&A video that I put up yesterday, and somebody's somebody's suggestion about how cumbersome my current ability for candidates to get access to the reference guide is. so, so yeah, that's probably an indication of the type of world where people just want to get things fast. And I get it. We have the means and the ability and technology to be able to provide that type of service. Uh, but yeah, I just don't have the time to go in and research and create that. There's this thing that's coming up. We've got the camps that are going. People are preparing for selections, and they're wanting some information to help them. We've done what we can. This is the process in order to get it. In order to get it, so you just reach out if you want it. But coming back to that last part and connecting the dots, I didn't think of that in terms of until these people have said that they want to use it for a reference point and some homework before coming on the camp. It helps not only prior to the camp, but more so it helps for the actual real test, which is going to be the selection, when those participants turn into candidates proper and they step onto their selection start line. So yeah, good move, those people that have done that, and appreciate you yeah, reaching out and investing, parting with your hard-earned dollars to purchase not only the reference guide, but also the training camps, those that have reached out and done that so far. So yeah, it's no small thing. So we definitely appreciate it. We're mindful of it. And yeah, we're looking forward to running the camp. We're looking forward to getting your feedback. We're looking forward to assisting those that are preparing as best we can, so that they can step on the start line, primed and ready to go. Yeah, so hopefully that all works out. And that's that. Where are we? Full send. Dun, dun, dun. Where are we? Sorry, there's some. There's some questions in here. I'm just needing to scroll back up to them. Okay, that doesn't care smart. Yeah, that's Sadi's one. Join the infantry. Oops, Jim. Never knew they took females in SF. Yeah, they will. They'll take, like, they can apply, and they've got to go through the process in order to. That's for the operator pathway, Special Operations Command, and what that all entails. I don't pretend to have a full picture of all of that. The bits and pieces of information that I've got have come from snippets of former members that were heavy in that space, and then some current members that within reason will share bits and pieces, and they trust me to not go and talk into that. So there are some other avenues, and some of that's publicized on the ADF site and stuff as well, as an example, in terms of elements that make up that Special Operations Command type structure. So you can find more info there. But yeah, they're definitely, well, it's open to females to apply if they want. MG is one of the most excellent female performers in competence and fitness I've ever seen and worked with. Oh, there you go, man. There's high praise right there. This is in regards to Monica Georgieva. If anyone should serve in SF, it's her. I'd follow her into any battle, anytime, any lock. Wow, that's high praise. I say that because I'm fortunate to have some interactions with the person that's put that comment there, and it's yeah, it carries weight as far as I'm concerned. JP Morgan and Co. Is it? Hey mate, I want to know when you're done with other questions, if you noticed any differences between members of 1/2 Commando and you guys. I'm just curious because you have different jobs. Thank you for the question. I want to know when you're done if you noticed any differences between members of 1/2 Commando and us. Depending on where you're coming from, bro, in terms of if there's anything specific, if you're talking attitude, culturally, there's a big difference. Probably how there was always, and I don't know what it's like these days. I would imagine it's still there, but there is a difference in terms of skill, caliber, jobs which you've identified. I think the clearest, maybe not clear, but Easiest analogy that I've heard, and pretty sure Pronke and Tim Curtis mention it, but other people I've heard share this as well. I think I've even heard Americans use this analogy between tier one, tier two operators, that commandos more probably aligned to like a sledgehammer, and the SAS more aligned would more be like a surgical tool. So those are probably, if you're using tools as the analogy, that gives you somewhat of a description or an indication of, I suppose, where the mindset is at. So again, without knowing specifically of what you're after in your question, is there a difference? If I noticed any differences, culture, attitude, training, jobs, obviously the jobs are different. And so therefore those analogies probably fit right in terms of sledgehammer, surgical, etc. There was always, I found anyway, an us and them, like, oh, that's the commandos. What do I want to train with them for? There was that, definitely that sort of mindset for a lot of things. For me, from my take, I don't know. I think because I was lucky enough to go to 4 RAR Commando at the time and serve there and work there and then deployed a team with them, and pretty much almost our whole patrol, or a large number of us from Recce Platoon, as well as some others from 4 RAR, went on to selection. And I think all but one passed. I think there might have been 12 of us that went on, and 11 passed from 4 RAR Commando. And I think the only reason the other guy didn't pass is because he broke his arm during, I think, a navigation at night, and might have taken a tumble, heavy pack, couldn't see properly, put out his arm. From what I understand, this might be wrong, but this is the story that came back. Put out his arm, snap, uh, couldn't continue with regards to activities that needed to be performed in other tasks. Not much you can do with a broken arm. So, in that setting anyway, in terms of what selection is testing for. So, I think I don't recall having any negative sort of thoughts about Commando unit itself. Maybe definitely individuals. Yep, I had some negative thoughts, but at the same time, I had negative thoughts about some individuals within the regiment. So, and they probably had the same thing about me. So, yeah, so that's where I'm going with that one. Skills wise, if you're talking skills wise, soldiering competency wise, again, on face value, on the surface, without knowing exactly what you might be after from a context perspective in terms of differences, um, from what I could see, very competent, good soldiers. Because that's, I think that I was fortunate because I went to what we would call a support company unit in a regular infantry battalion where I'm from anyway, or what we used to call support company. And recon platoon would have been one of those support company experienced seasoned soldiers that are pretty good at their job. They got all the basics down pat and then some. So because I served and worked in that area, my exposure to 4 RAR Commando unit was fairly narrow and limited. I was surrounded by very, very competent soldiers, good skills, good attitude, and people that I enjoyed working with, by and large, for the most part. So, yeah, that's probably what I could say about that. I could talk about other people without naming them. I could talk about some of their perceptions, which is around that, the bloody commandos, this, that, and the other. And there's us beating our chest, we're the SAS, blah blah blah. You got those two different dynamics. And then I could also say the same thing actually about some commanders that would look at the regiment and go, we can do that. If we can do that, the same, if not better. So I think there's always going to be a bit of a tension, tension, for want of a better term, between the two units, regardless of whether they're on the same selection or not. So probably much like the SAS and SBS in the UK, same UKSF selection. There comes a point where they split off, and I think the SB guys go to Poole and do what they need to do, and the 2-2 guys go to H or go to Hereford, and then they do what they need to do. From my limited understanding, don't quote me on that. So there may be some people that pass the UK, that pass the Australian SF selection, which is joint, combined now, as we know, and they may have put down SASR, but they don't get picked up for it. They get put to Commando instead, and others do go to SASR. That person, I would imagine, this is just me spitballing here, but that person who didn't get picked up for SASR but chose it, but they were happy to take Commando as the second option, they're probably always going to have thoughts and feelings around, I should be there. I should be in SASR. Like, I passed the same. They may even sit back and go, I did better than that person. I did better than that guy who they took to SASR. I smoked him on the navigation. I smoked him on the 3.2, whatever. But it's more than, like, your physical abilities is honestly, as hard as it is, and as much physical activity and as physically demanding as selection is, honestly, it is only a small portion in terms of the bigger picture of who and what they're looking for when it comes to people to go and serve in the unit. And I don't know how many different ways to say that. I've heard that said multiple times and in lots of different ways by other UK, Australia, and NZ SF guys in terms of when they're talking about what the units are looking for. So, yeah, great. More power to you, man. If you're a fit legend and you can smoke all the dudes in SASR or in SAS here, NZ, or the UK, awesome. Good for you. There's plenty of people that can smoke from a fitness perspective, fitness standards wise, operators within the special air service. That's not in debate. Like, that's well known. There are plenty of weapons out there that can do that. But that's only a small portion of what the unit's looking for. Okay, so the unit has got people that physically meet the standard and are capable, and they've got more in their basket, for want of a better term, in terms of what they can offer and what they do. So, and what they're able to do. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. I'm not sure if I answered your question without just rambling off on full send on a tangent. If you want to know about hardcore females, ask your wife about 5'3" Sergeant Grey. If it's the same Sergeant Grey, I don't know if my wife had her. I had a Sergeant Grey though, little female sergeant, Ordnance Corps. If it's the same one, I don't know if that's the same one for you, Rubber Kiwi. I didn't think she was hardcore. I thought she was blinking. I thought she was annoying. But hey, it is what it is. She did her job. Like, she was professional. Don't get me wrong. But I just, yeah, I didn't have much interaction with her anyway. We mostly interacted with our NCOs, our section commanders. So I had Corporal Mohi for the most part, who was an infantry soldier, and everybody was scared of him, including me. Sports guy, how did you cope? Oops, thing just went. How did you cope with the heat of Australia in your? Yeah, just adapted. Just got used to it. How did you cope with the heat of your Australian heat of Australia in your SASR selection? Just, yeah, acclimatization helped. So Sydney, then pre-deployment training in Tully or in Queensland area before going to Timor. Timor, stinking hot the whole time. Come back and then, yeah, training and then off on selection. So I had a chance. The heat in Perth I found very different to the East Coast, and to the northern parts, like way less humid, just more dry heat. Still bloody hot nonetheless, and still miserable. So yeah, but the acclimatization helped, and I think that's why I mentioned in one of the videos that I did part 2 of the no specific something or other, anyway, part 3 or whatever it is. I think I touched on that. There was a Corporal Piggott at the time, an SASR, who asked me if I wanted to get on the selection when I'd got into Australia in Singleton. I said yes, but I wasn't able to. I'd missed the cutoff. He come back and told me, and I think I talk about how I think that worked out better for me, because I probably would have struggled, and I may have failed that bloody 3.2. Thankfully I didn't, but just scraped in. Haha, full send, yes. An hour of knowledge, almost impossible to find anywhere else, Joe. I'll allow it. You too, man. Thank you very much. I'll take it. Is the writing the worst part to look back on now? Is the writing the worst part? Writing. I'm not sure what you mean. Is the writing the worst part to look back on now? I grew up with my 2 older brothers always calling me Scrotum. Or Scrote. Yeah. Most dangerous weapon on the planet. What's this one? Jacob. Hope you're well, Joe. I am. Thank you, Jacob. Hope you are too, man. And anybody that spent any time here, if you're still here listening to me, just trying to catch up. I think I have now. I've caught up on those. If you were like Solly and in between 2 live shows, he's on the tier 1, and then he was kind enough to stop by here. Thank thank you very much. Or even if you just stumbled upon here, appreciate your time, the support, the questions. Heck, there was a lot. And thankful to you listening to me being on full send pretty much the whole time. Just constant transmit, my hand on the Pressel switch and not taking it off until I've said everything I want to say and not listening to anyone else. So apologies for that, but thank you all very much. Appreciate your time, support as always. And with that, oh, hang on. From a tier 1 guy, Joe Seals were sharing a space with Tutu. In Afghan Seals put second to none above their door to provoke a response from them. SA's put none above their door in response. From a tier 1 guy, Joe Seals was sharing a space with Tutu. Okay, so in Afghan, Seals put second to none. I'm not sure. I'm a little bit lost on that one. It's probably just my comprehension going out the window, or maybe more context. I'll message you later, Solly, and then get some clarity because I'm struggling. If you have the right character but don't have the teachable skills, e.g. land nav, if you have the right character but don't have the teachable skills yet, e.g. land nav, would they kick you out or teach you up so you can pass? You need to learn that skill before you go on selection. It's a huge part of what they're testing you for on selection. Land nav navigation skills. So if you've got the right character teachable skills, then you need that person needs to go learn that skill that they're failing at right now, and navigation is massive. You need to go learn that so that you've at least got the basics, so that you at least know how to plot your bearing, find where you are on a map, and you know your paces to distance, so that you can as accurately, like just worst case, set your dial to the right bearing and then go on that bearing. If your bearing goes up and down because you're not confident in your map to ground, like I wasn't for my first selection, then make sure that you've put the work in so that you can go up, down over those features to get to where you need to get to. So yeah, you do need to. Other skills on cycle, they're not expecting to be teaching you land navigation on the cycle. Like, you should know that before you get there. There's so much more other stuff that you need to learn. And basic training does a good job, to be fair. So does core training. Does a good job of teaching you basics of navigation and stuff. So hopefully that helps. Drought 8199. He asked earlier what the worst part to look back on was while writing. Worst part to look back on is the writing the worst part to look? Oh, okay, got you. No, I actually enjoyed the writing that down. I mean, just typing. I'm not a super fast typer, but I don't mind typing things out on the keyboard and that sort of thing. So yeah, no, the writing hasn't been, and it was probably just grabbing the information from the lads, and then compiling that and then putting that into the reference. So thank you for that, bros. Hot mic us all. Yeah. Who's that hot mic? And hey mate, I'm a huge fan. I love it. Oh, thank you, bro. Appreciate it. Zach 8414. Very kind. Appreciate that very much. Seal's saying they're the best by being second to no one, as in they're the best SF. Oh, okay. Sorry, Solly. Thank you for that. Interesting. Yeah. Hey, if that's how they feel, that's how they feel, eh? Yeah, no comment. They can say whatever they want to say, I guess. No different to me. I come on here, say whatever I want. Yeah, but appreciate it, Solly. Appreciate everybody's time. Hope you all have a beautiful weekend. Sorry for the fastball and doing this live so early as opposed to doing it at 7, the usual time. I will probably end up needing to, just with what's happening at the moment, I will probably end up shifting these lives and doing them earlier on the Fridays now as well. So time TBC, but that'll come out. I just got to fit it into the schedule. But really, really appreciate the support, the comments, and your time being on here, listening to me hot mic is all, and then just bloody not give you a chance. Might have been banter. Yeah, could have been banter too. That's a good point. Americans. Anyway, have a beautiful weekend, eh? Keep turning up, keep staying in the fight, man. Put one foot in front of the other. Take one day at a time. It might sound repetitive. Hopefully it doesn't sound insincere though. It is real. Lots of people, all of us, myself included, at different times, got a lot on our plates. You watching, if you're here watching, no doubt have got stuff going on as well. Not all of it positive, not all of it easy to cope with. So do what you can to stay in that fight and to keep turning up. The sun will shine again. Again, easier said than done. Much easier said than done, especially when things are miserable and hard. Easier to say when things are going well and when things are in a reasonably good space. But through experience, no doubt your own experiences in that as well. Yeah, staying in that fight, even when it sucks, man, is important. Not only for ourselves, for yourself, but for people that care about you and for the people that you care about. So, yeah, stick at it. As always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next video, there is a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you all. Have an awesome weekend, everybody. Appreciate you.